Hello everyone, welcome to our second SIL-Asia webinar. If you need assistance, please use the chat window. And if you're having difficulties in configuring your connection, please log out from the session and rejoin again. Use your phones or tablets to join by using the webinar ID 936-465-787. For those attending our webinar for the first time, please be advised that all microphones are muted throughout the meeting. For comments, chat box, and for questions, please use the questions box. The Q&A will be held after the lecture. We will now call on our speaker, Ms. Pearl Gasmin.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. This is actually a delayed one because we should have met the week before. So the webinar is about a client registry, some overview on what is a client registry, and basically a guide on to plan and implement a client registry of our own. So let me introduce myself first. So I am Ms. Pearl Gasmin from the a lab expert from the Standards and Interoperability Layer Lab Asia, and I'm currently a faculty of the Computer Science Department in UP Manila. Okay, so starting off with our webinar. And so some outline. So first we will have a brief introduction what is a client registry, and then we'll go on with the steps on how to implement a client registry. So this steps will be based on the OHIE Client Registry Planning and Implementation Guide version 0.5. Okay, so as you can see in your screen, so this is the OpenHIE architecture. So some of us have seen this like 1,000 times, a million times, but still, I want to share this image to all of the attendees of our webinar. Okay, so here, as you can see, we have the CR, which is in the blue one because we have to focus on what is a client registry. So what is a client registry? So this is actually a registry that gives us a definitive way to give a patient or a person so that we can identify the patients uniquely. Okay, so the client registry is designed to assist in uniquely identifying individuals who receive healthcare services. So as you can see in the illustration, so we have here like a golden key. So this golden key will be associated to one patient. And then each patient will have a demographics data. Okay, so this demographics data can be composed of different fields depending on the implementation of for every country. So aside from the demographics data, this can also include local IDs from different organizations, like for example your driver license ID or like an insurance number. So this is so this local IDs and this demographics data will comprise your client registry. And so some info. So with the demographics data, we can only have like a fuzzy match for a specific person. But with the local IDs, of course, since these are exact matches, this will have as exact matches on the patients. Okay, so next would be on how to implement a client registry. Okay, so we have some steps that we can follow based on the OHIE. So this guide is broken into the following steps. So step one would be analyzing the current environment. So what should be what should we take into consideration when we want to make our own client registry. Then step 2 would be establishing leadership and ownership. So in this step, we can identify people who will guide, who will give the direction of the client registry. So it actually differs from every country, for every country. We can include different stakeholders depending on the current situation of the of your country. So next would be step 3, document specifications and requirements. So here we will specify what could be the workflows, okay? And then step 4, of course, the what we have defined in our step 3, the document specifications, we have to implement them. And then step 5, so after implementation, of course, we should have like a support plan. So in the long run, it can have like a help desk support or any other support that we will further discuss later on. And then lastly, okay, so lastly would be a post-production evaluation. So this is actually because once we implement a client registry, it's like an incremented one. So it's not like a one-time big shot client registry on a national level. So we can have like a pilot first before actually implementing it nationwide or on a bigger scope. Okay, so here, so we have to dig in on the on each step that we have here. So for the step 1, okay, so as you can see, so first we have to identify the stakeholders of the system. So interest in a client registry may span a diverse network of stakeholders with various types of information system. So stakeholders will help drive the project. So basically, they will give you the what they call this, the vision. So they will give you the where is this client registry going. So they will also set the stage for the use cases and the value that the HIE can deliver. So what are examples of the possible stakeholders? So we can have like organizations that create patient data. So basically, we can also include here the hospitals, or if they have systems that create a patient data. Also, we can also include any existing client registry. So one hospital may have its own client registry, which may compose of the different patient data from their different departments. So in this case, the client registry can have a different, can have a certain level of scope. Okay. So next would be, of course, since we are dealing with patient data, another stakeholder that we must include is of course the patients. Okay, so next would be healthcare professionals such as the doctors, the nurse, etc. And then we can have like organization or group managing a national healthcare ID. Okay. We can also include, of course, the insurance provider. So whenever we have like claims, like for example in the Philippines, we have the PhilHealth for our for the any other insurance, or the insurance like Life, or if they have like health-related insurance. And then we can also include the Ministry of Health. So once potential stakeholders are identified, so this will be helpful to understand high-level stakeholder motivation and challenges. So this will also help the stakeholders engage and recruit individuals that will represent the organizational stakeholders. Okay, so next would be understanding the existing patient identifier. So as mentioned a while ago, so we have two types of patient identifiers. So is, the first one would be the unique code or set of codes used to identify a patient in a given system. So if we go back, this is actually your local IDs that will give you an exact match. And then the second type would be the demographic attributes or the demographic data used to describe someone uniquely. So with the local IDs, of course, this will come from different systems, like a national health ID or national ID. And then with the demographics data, so again, this demographics data may be different from one country to another. Okay, so for example, what can be included in the demographics data? So of course, you have a name. So the name may include a first name, a middle name, and the last name. And then you have a gender, male or female. Okay, and then you also have your date of birth, which may include your day, month, and then the year the patient was born. And then you can also include other demographic data like the geographic data such as various levels of the client's residence. It can include the street address, the village, the city, state or region, and of course the country. So we can also add like a phone number and then ethnicity. Okay, so excuse me. So next would be to identify applicable standards. So while researching the demographic fields used to identify patients in your context, list any sources of applicable data standards used in your certain country. So for example, in our country, in the Philippines, we have some standards that we can use, like the Philippine National Health Data Dictionary. We also have some ISO 21091 for health informatics, and then other standards that you may want to include or may want to consider in your client registry. So next would be to identify identify system constraints. So what are these system constraints? So some of the constraints that we can specify would be the data capacity. So what is the country's population? Is it 1 million, 2 million, 100 million? So we must consider the country's population when making a client registry. How many of those people will the client registry need to support? So how many patients are already stored in the point of care application? So these are some questions that can help us solve or give feedback in our data capacity. Next would be data quality. So of course, the data that will come from different systems may not have the same quality from each point of care. So actually in some systems, we cannot really say that we have a good quality. So most of the existing systems that we have may have inaccurate or some missing information. Next would be network capacity and reliability. So are there constraints on the network reliability or capacity? So do we have enough network capability? Like do we have a cloud? Is the internet connection stable? And then also if the connections are secure. So next would be another one can be the power constraints. So are there any constraints on electricity or power? And so those are just some of the system constraints that we need to address when we design our own client registry. Okay, so next would be establishing leadership and ownership. Excuse me. So first we must establish the leadership. So we have an SLG, or we have to form as a SLG or as stakeholder leadership group. Okay, so this group will be composed of effective leaders of effective leaders sorry, that can so stakeholder leadership is essential for supporting the successful implementation of a client registry. So as I mentioned a while ago, so why do we need to have this SLG or the stakeholder leadership group? It's because they have to set the direction of how we implement the client registry. So the group should have shared ownership of the registry and be committed to the outcomes. So once established, the SLG should be the authority under which the client registry operates, and some of their responsibilities would be defining the project scope. We also have like ensuring the agreement on the data specification and also their implementation. So this SLG should be involved throughout the implementation of the client registry, not just at the beginning. So or from the start up to the end, and of course through the successive iteration of implementing the client registry. So next would be establishing owners and SME. So what are SMEs? So these are subject matter experts. So we have a client registry content owner. We also have a client registry software owners. We also have infrastructure owner, and then of course our subject matter experts. So they have different scope and then rules. So for example, the client registry content owner should have a knowledge of the contents of the data. So he knows what kind of format should be used for each specific fields that we have in our client registry. Okay, and then the client registry software owners or the transaction and content management software owners should have a knowledge and understanding of the good practices for developing, implementing, and then managing the systems involved in our client registry. So of course, there are a lot of systems that can connect and then interoperate with our client registry. So we also have infrastructure owner. So the owner should have a knowledge of system quality practices and any applicable regulations for managing electronic records. And then lastly, our SME or subject matter experts should have an understanding of the current environment, including the existing data sources and formats and business processes. So these are just some of the owners and then SMEs that we should establish before we start our own client registry. And then, of course, since if we now have our SLG and then our owners and our SME, we can now define our project scope. So it is highly recommended that an iterative registry implementation should be used in making the client registry. So when using an iterative process, so implementation team should designate an initial scope for the project. So we can have like a pilot system first, like a small scope. For example, a certain hospital, like in a city. And then so, for example, in that hospital, you can they have like 4 different EMRs, and then we want to connect them. So this is a starting process. So this can be a pilot, and then afterwards, if this is successful, okay, so we can then increase or expand our scope. Like for example, we can now connect different hospitals citywide, and then regional, and then countrywide. So it actually depends on the outcome of the first iteration that we will have. Okay, so next. Okay, next would be document specifications and requirements. So a client registry should be responsive to users' needs and the local context. So that's why we need to document our user stories. So user stories and data specification are two ways to describe. So what will the client registry achieve and how should it operate? So basically, if we want to implement a client registry, we should document this user story because we want to automate what is really happening in the real world. So it's like just reflecting what's happening in the manual operations. So user stories are a mechanism to gather user requirements and core requirements describing the desired registry functionality. So because of if we already know the user stories, from there we can have the desired registry functionality. So these user stories are just short and simple description of how a particular user needs interact with our system. So yeah, so some user story can be like clinic visits, and then some it can also be like an insurance verification. So how does a visit in a clinic happen? So for example, a pregnant woman enters the clinic and then have her first appointment. So what happened was first the health worker or the nurse can get or collect the patient's data. So this include the demographics data and then save it in the database. And then after that, you can also record the other visits of the pregnant woman. So from the start of the first consultation up to the last consultation, so you can have you can actually track it, okay? And then yeah, so after that, so after documenting user stories, we can also determine authoritative source strategy. So there are actually two approaches when it comes to this authoritative source strategy. So the question that you want to answer is, who have the authority to change the data in our client registry? So is it the point of care, or is it the client registry? So the approach one is that the point of care authority approach. So in this approach, the POS are the authoritative source, and they create and manage the registry updates of their records. So in comparison with the registry authority approach, so this approach assumes a controlled and curated approach to the client registry, where the client registry is the authoritative source. So meaning in the second approach, the client registry can modify the data if ever there are updates, so that the registry can do that. But in the first approach, so any update should come from the POS or from our point of care facilities, and it will just be mirrored in the registry. Next would be excuse me, data specifications. Okay, so using data standards and systems identified in the analysis phase of this project, the data specification for the registry will need to be documented. So what is a data specification document? This is just a technical tool describing the master client list data elements or the information to be managed in the client registry. This is actually similar to the concept of a data dictionary, where the contents and format of data elements in the system are documented. So another one would be documenting the data privacy, impact, and requirements. So in this one, because the data in the registry contains patient demographic data, that is used to identify a person, it is also important to understand any national or local data privacy law that apply to this data. So the SLG may have to look into this. What are the laws that can be applied in the current data? Okay, so next would be the document workflow. So there are actually 4 workflows that are currently defined by the Open HIE Client Registry community, wherein the client registry is an actor. So what are these workflows? So we have the create patient demographic record workflow. We also have the query patient. So as you can see, there are 2 ways of querying a patient demographic data. So one is by its demographic data, and then another one is through the local ID or the other identifiers. And then, of course, lastly is update the patient demographic record. So in creating a demographic data, so this is the workflow. So from the point of service, so you'll just register the patient, and then it will pass through the interoperability layer. Okay, so from the interoperability layer, it will then go to the client registry, so that it will register the patient demographics in the client registry, and then once saved, it will send an acknowledgement that the patient is already in the client registry, and then the interoperability layer will then acknowledge that the patient is indeed in the client registry. So another would be, so the query patient demographic records and the query patient demographic, by identifier and by demographic, it's almost the same. It's just that your query string will be an identifier, and then the other one would be the demographics data. And then the last workflow, so querying and so updating patient demographic record. So you will just push the update from the POS, passing through the interoperability layer, and then through the client registry, and then of course another acknowledgement should be sent back to the POS once the update is made. Okay, so moving on. So step 4, implement specification. So in this step, we should determine resources and, project plan. So the resource plan and project plans need to address the following types of activities. So what are these activities? So first, this can be selecting, procuring, installing, and configuring software and hardware. So we'll not just handle just the software. Of course, we need the infrastructure, which are the hardware parts. Next, another one would be the point of care systems, insurance systems, national registry systems that will interact with the client registry. So in this part, they may need to enhance their systems such that they can communicate with the interoperability layer of the architecture. So these are just some of the activities that should be part of the determining the resources and the project plan. So next would be how do we select a software? So based upon the requirements that the SLG come up, the team or the SLG should evaluate and then select software solutions that cater their specific needs. So, okay, so in addition to defining an architecture and making recommendations on standards to use, there are some client registry tools that are actually certified by the Open HIE to comply with the Open HIE architecture and then the data exchange standards. So So the basic, actually the components that you really need for this would be a client registry tool that can, this will be discussed on our next webinar. So hopefully we can you can still join me with next week for a survey of the client registry. And then of course you have the interoperability layer. Next would be determining the hardware needs. So as I said a while ago, so we are not really just focusing on the hardware. We should also identify the hardware needs. So what should be the what is the needs of the software for us to be able to run them. Okay. So next would be defining the patient matching algorithm. So one of the unique features of a client registry is its patient matching algorithm, used to identify if the client already exists in the registry. So, since the client registry aims to have a definitive way of uniquely identifying a patient, duplication is not allowed. So we should be, whenever we enter a new patient data, we must, the client registry should be able to notify that this can have, this may have a match, or it is possibly in the client registry already. Okay, so there is a spectrum of matching options from simple matching or exactly matching key fields to complex matching algorithm. So we should also note that using too simplistic of an algorithm may result in a higher percentage of duplicate records. So therefore, it is recommended that the SLG and the content owner work through a process to determine the appropriate matching scheme. So yeah, so this process may involve performing initial data analysis to identify the candidate fields. So this can be like a combination of the fields. So in some client registry tools, you can actually specify what could be the fields that will tell you that this can be a possible duplicate. Yeah, you can also identify blocking schemes and then configure or parameterize matching algorithm. So it can be a deterministic or probabilistic approach. So some client registry may give you that option, or sometimes it's already inherent with the client registry. Next would be software validation and testing. So this may include a workflow testing. So you need to test to ensure that the client registry appropriately integrates with the interop layer and issue of the point of care system or other systems that will provide or receive data. So basically, are they really interoperable? So this system can really pass data from the POS passing through the IOL interop layer and then to the client registry and then back. So this is called the integration testing. So another would be performance and load testing. So you can have like you can address transaction throughput. So this can be tested by estimating the number of transactions that will be expected during peak business times and ensuring that the network and hardware can support this volume of transactions. Okay, so next would be creating a support plan. So it should be expected that requirements and requests for the registry data feeds will evolve over time. So as I said a while ago, it may start small at first, but through the iterative process, the scope can be enhanced or can be expanded to a larger scope. So upon expanding, you may need some additional support. You can have your operation support. So this is intended to maintain the logistic and infrastructure required for the registry. You also may have a developer support. So it is important. The developer support is important to facilitate any future adaptation of the client registry. So since it is recommended that you have an iterative process, so developers may come and go, but the developer support should be stable for the client registry if you want to succeed. Next would be integration support. So since we want to connect more POS, okay, so with our architecture, so an ongoing support will be required to make this integration. So next is you can also have a data support. Uh, uh, so support for issues like data collection, curation, analysis, and then utilization. So help desk support. This may not be required initially, but as more users and organizations start using the client registry, it may become important to identify, document, and direct responses to types of requests from varied types of users. So this may be after several iterations. So next would be capacity development and training. So to appropriately provide supports like the operation, developer, integration, data, and help desk, there will need to be training to build the capacity of the supporting team. So, yeah. So, moving on. Okay, so lastly, the post-production evaluation. So this will be this will this will be done like post-production. So after the first iteration, so it is important to capture the lessons learned. So one helpful exercise that we can do is to make a to-do list. So this to-do list, in the first list, the team should document the aspects of the project that work well. Okay, so why do we need this? So that we can continue doing this part of the project. And another one would be the list of items that could be done differently next time. So maybe some of the some we have done like some not really a failure, but can be like it can be done on a more stable or more efficient way. So maybe we could implement it differently on our next iteration. So once the system is running and stabilized, the iterative development process can begin again with an expanded scope. So using the list that we made, so we can continue working, we can continue doing what worked well in the first iteration, and that some items can be done differently. Okay, so that's all for the for today's or tonight's webinar. So if you have any questions, so you can actually type in your question for. So we have here a question from Vladimir Choi. So, hi, would it be possible for subsequent presentations to use a dedicated microphone headset for the speakers where possible? Yeah, we will do that. Thank you. So if you have any more questions, okay. So another question from one of our attendees. So how can we safely navigate Philippine privacy law? So basically, if we want to navigate privacy law, so we can actually consult some lawyers or some privacy law experts. So I think one of our lab experts, Dr. Raymond Sarmiento, is also digging in with the privacy law here in our country. So another questions. So could you briefly describe and compare the different reference software for CR, the MedXR, and then OpenMPI? So actually, this will be the topic for our next webinar. So I'm encouraging Mr. Vladimir Choi to join us for another session of our webinar. But for today, so one maybe things to consider when you want to select or choose from client registry is ease of use. Okay, so how is it? How can you easily navigate or connect it to your different systems? So will it need more programming, or is it easily you can easily connect with the client registry? Another one would be the support, or for example, like the documents for that client registry. Is it openly available? You can easily get help from the proponents of the software. Yeah, so next webinar we will discuss more on the other. This will be it will basically be a survey of some client registry that we have in the that are available to us. Okay, so another question is, which patient registries have you been able to implement in the Philippines? And so actually our lab, the SIL-Asia, is actually using now the OpenEMPI for our Navotas project. Yep. So this is our pilot project in the, yeah, so we're using the OpenEMPI as of now. So are there any more questions? So if there are no more questions from our attendees, so I would like to thank you for attending the webinar. And then this is Per Grassman of the SIL-Asia signing off.